when troubleshooting booting issues with your system, you have basically two options. So let's say your system is not booting and it's not starting up and you have problems. If your system can find at least the root file system, then you can go into single user mode and fix the problem. And usually you do this by editing configuration files such as the fstab file or the grub.com file. If you can't find the root file system, then your only other option is to go into rescue mode, and from rescue mode to fix your system. So I'm going to show you both cases. So let's start first with going into single user mode. So I'm going to go ahead and start my virtual machine. Okay, to go into single user mode, basically what you have to do is you have to add a parameter to the grub here. When you get to the grub part here, you press the letter A to modify the kernel parameters, and you get this screen. And right after quiet, you want to put the number 1, so it goes into single user mode. Then I'm going to go ahead and press enter, and it should start up. Okay, we'll wait for the system to boot into run level 1. Like I said before, once you're in run level 1, then you can edit files. So a few weeks ago when we were working with the fstab file, a few students had incorrect formatting of the home or the labels and partitions and things like that, and their system was not booting. So this is how you would go into single user mode and then edit that file and fix it, or comment out the lines that you're not sure about. Another thing that you can do from single user mode is, let's say you forgot your root password and you needed a root password again, of course, and what you would do is you would go into single user mode and then run the passwd command to reset that password. When you're in single user mode, they put you in a shell and you're already logged in, so you don't have to log in or know the root password. So that's a nice feature. Now that's also can be dangerous and insecure if you have people around your data center that could change your root password. So what most administrators do with production systems is put a bootloader password on grub, so that before they can change anything on grub, they would have to put in a password, and that gives you a little bit more security there and prevents you from other people changing your root password. But if you're going to take the Red Hat exam, the RHCT or the RHCE, they'll give you a machine, and basically you will have to reset the password, the root password, and this is how you would do it. Okay, so I'm waiting here. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, it says enter in run level 1. Okay, looks like we're at the prompt now. So let's say I forgot my root password. I could type the passwd command here on root, or I don't have to type root because it's the default user, so I could change it, and now I have a new root password. If you had problems to your fstab file, then you could fix it from here. And the way you would do that is you would go to cd etc bifs tab, you would bi that file, and let's say you weren't sure about this label here for home, so you could put a comment in there and then save it and then try booting again and see if that fixed the problem. That would be one way to fix that. But in my case, my FS tab is okay, so I'm going to exit and not save the changes. Another file that could be corrupted that won't allow your system to boot is the grub file, which is the bootloader file configuration, and that is vi etc grub.conf. This file actually exists in the boot directory, but there's a link in etc for it, so let's go there. And there's my grub file. So if, for example, you install a new kernel and somehow things got messed up on this file, you would go into your backup, get your other file, and bring it over here and replace this one, and then try to boot again and see if that was the issue. For this demo, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the sbin directory, and I'm gonna ls the init file. This is a very important file that your system uses for the whole boot process and initializing all the services. So if I delete this file, we're gonna have big issues and my system won't boot, and we will have to go into rescue mode to fix this. So I'm gonna delete it and show you how we would fix something like this if your init file got corrupted. So I'm gonna copy init to the var just to have a copy. Then I'm gonna rm init from here. Make sure I'm in sbin, yes. Now I'm gonna do sync. Sync actually writes that to the file system, so normally you don't have to run that, but it's always safe to do it just to make sure your changes went through. So from here, we'll see what happens. Okay, so it's gonna go into run level 3 now, and init already was loaded in memory, so it's still there. So once I get there, I'm gonna restart the system, or I should be able to do a bm send control delete, and it cannot execute init because it's not there. Okay, so we'll just have to wait. So we'll wait for init 3 to start, and from then I'm gonna go to var init and do a restart from there. And then when it tries to boot again, we'll see how it has runs into problems. So we'll just wait. While this is happening, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you a different screen, and I'm gonna show you how to troubleshoot a network problem. Okay, so let's say you were trying to FTP a file from the FTP server, but you couldn't. For some reason, your system wasn't going there and getting the file. So how would you go about troubleshooting the problem? The first thing I would do is run the ifconfig command on ETH0, which is your interface. And now you would see that you have an IP address, which is a good sign. And so you know you have an IP address and you have packets that are coming in and out, so that's good. So then the next step would be to run the MIII tool and see that you have a link, and the link is okay and negotiated at 100 base TX, so that's good. So knowing that you have a good link, the next thing would be to ping the server. Ping basically just checks to see if the server is up, the one that you're going to. Because now we know that our system looks good, So now we need to ping the other server. So you would do ping ftp.csc570e.edu. See, and now I ping it, so I know it's coming back with reply, so it looks like it's okay. So then I know that I can ping it and get to it. If you can ping it, then you know you don't have a problem with your routing tables. But if that IP was on a different network, you could do netstat -rn to make sure that you have a default gateway, which in my case is the correct one, so I'm okay there. So if let's say you didn't have an IP address here when you did an ifconfig, the first thing I would do would be to do a service network restart to restart your network interface, which basically, if you're using DHCP, will query the DHCP server and try to get an IP. If you still didn't get an IP, then there's a possibility that the DHCP server is down. So what I would do next is go in and try to put a manual IP just to be safe, and then try again to do the pinging. Here in mine, I don't have any issues, so my pings came back. But let's say you didn't have an IP here, then your pings wouldn't come back, so you knew it was your network. So I would try to restart it. If it didn't work, then the next logical step would be to try, after you restart the network, to put a manual IP to see if it's due to the DHCP not getting any packets back. Another thing you could do would be to tell -100 the var log messages, just to make sure that your DHCP request went through and that there was an error there. That could also help you there. If it could be DNS also, so it could be that you're not resolving your host name to your IP address. So what you could do is try to ping the IP address instead of the host name. So you would ping 192.168.118.1. So let's say when you did a ping on ftp.csc570e.edu and you didn't get any pings back, but then when you did the IP, you did get pings back, then you would know it's your DNS server. So then you could go to your etcresolve.conf and see what DNS servers you have currently there and change those accordingly. So I know some of you have had some network problems before, and sometimes when I reboot the server, the DHCP doesn't come up. So next time you run into issues with the network, this is how you would go about try to troubleshoot those. So now let's go back and see we're on init level 3. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. And I'm going to do a var init 0 to shut down. Now remember, we deleted the init from sbin init, which is the default location. So once we boot this system, it won't start properly. So we will see that. Okay, so we're here now, and the next thing we need to do is try to start the system again and see if we run into any issues. I'm expecting that we will, because we're missing the init file, but let's wait and see. I'm gonna go ahead and press enter to speed this up. Just gonna uncompress the kernel. Now I could have deleted another important file such as the mount file, and basically you would do the same thing that I'm doing now to recover the init uh, executable. And hopefully the error that we get will give us a clue as to what the problem is. Okay, we'll wait a couple more minutes. See if we see any errors. So far it's looking good. Oh, there we go. It says, kernel panic, no syncing, attempting to kill init. No such file or directory. Okay, no such file or directory attempting to kill init. So you know something's wrong with your init file. So at this point, you want to shut down your VM. What we need to do is go into rescue mode. And to go into rescue mode, we have to put the first CD of the Red Hat installation CD. And in our case, we don't have CDs, but we have this installation tree on the network on an FTP server. So I'm going to go here into the CD-ROM and I'm going to tell it to connect and power on. And I'm going to use this boot.iso image, which is the same ISO that we used to install the OS. And what I have to do now is power it on and tell the BIOS to boot from the CD. So I have to press escape here to boot from the CD. And that would be number 3, to boot from the CD-ROM, which is my ISO, boot.iso. And from there, I'm going to go to the network to start the rescue mode. But first, I have to type here Linux rescue. If I didn't type anything, it would start the installation of Linux. But since I have problems, I'm going to go into Linux rescue mode. So Linux rescue is going to go ahead and start. Again, the reason we're doing Linux rescue mode is because we can't find the root file system. This wouldn't work if we went into single user mode because the init command, we need the init command to get into init1. So we have to go into rescue mode to fix this problem. So it's going to load the drivers, and then it's going to ask me where is the installation file. So English, US keyboard, and where are the installation files? In my case, they're from FTP. I want on DHCP IP. And the FTP site name is FTP. And it's under pub Red Hat 4. This is basically similar to what we did when we did our installation. The only difference is that we put Linux rescue at the boot. So it goes into rescue mode. Now what it's going to do is going to mount the root file system under mnt sysimage. Okay, and we're going to have to run the chroot command to move into the standard directory tree, because we won't be in standard directory tree. Will be the root file system will be under mount sysimage. So we need to run chroot mount sysimage to move into standard directory tree. So we'll wait a couple minutes. It's going to try to detect. Here we're going to tell it to continue. Continue basically tells it to find any installations and to make them writable. So I'm going to hit continue. It's going to search. It's going to find our installation and it's going to put it on mount sysimage. So that's good. So the first thing you want to do is you want to do a ch root mount sys image. And from here, what we want to do is try to recover our init file, which we're going to have to basically get the RPM for it and try to reinstall it so it copies it back to where it needs to be. So what we're going to do is we are going to go to, let's see, we're in the what directory? We're going to go into the root directory. Okay, and here you would FTP to ftp.csc 570e that first. Here's what we need to do first. First, we need to figure out where what RPM contains the init file. So to do that, we run the command RPM minus QF sbin init. And this will tell us what RPM we need to install the init. And it's the sysv init file, RPM. So what we're going to do is we're going to FTP to ftp.csc 570e.edu. We're going to log in as anonymous. We're going to go into pub, we're going to go into Red Hat, we're going to go into for, we're going to go into Red Hat, we're going to go into RPMs. So this is the directory where all the RPMs are. So I'm going to put binary because it's a binary file. I'm going to put prompt so it doesn't prompt me. And then I'm going to do mget sysv star to get everything that starts with sysv. Okay, it looks like it copied, so now I'm going to quit. We'll wait for my prompt to come back. We'll do an ls. And we should see that now we have the RPM there, and we do. So now we have to install it. So we do RPM minus ubh. We're going to update it because it's already installed. And we have to pass the force command because otherwise it's going to tell us it is already installed. So here we type the whole thing. sysv init-2.85-34.i386.rpm. So we go ahead and run that. It's gonna have scriptlet failed. Let's see if you put it there. ls sbin init. And it did put it there, so we're in good shape. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to exit. And I'm going to do a Control D to exit. It's going to try to boot again, and this time it should work. And enter. And it should go into run level 3 like normal, and we shouldn't get that error again. As you can see, this is one way to recover a corrupted file. which sometimes is the init file, sometimes it's the mount, it could be other things missing. Um, but it's always a good idea to keep a backup of your etc directory because that's where your configuration files are. And if you need to go into run level 1 and fix it from there from single user mode, that's one way to recover it from there. But the executables, you really don't need them because like in this case when we lost the init file, I went in and got the RPM for it and basically reinstalled it. So here you can see that init is now booting, and we don't have any problems anymore. Yes, init booted okay, so we're in good shape.